She swept the floors. They never asked her name. But when the comms lit up with her code name, the entire base stopped breathing. Part 1 of 3, the sound of the mop was a steady, rhythmic whisper. Swish slap, swish slap. It was the only constant in the ever-shifting hum of the Arctic Circle command base. Servers whirred like a million captured insects. Keyboards clicked in. Frantic Morse code, and the air itself seemed to crackle with encrypted data, flying to and from satellites unseen in the perpetual twilight outside. In the center of this technological storm was Alara. To the analysts and officers of listening, Station KR7, she was just part of the background hum. A woman of indeterminate age, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, and hands that were chapped and raw from bleach. She was the cleaner. The ghost who emptied their trash cans, wiped their coffee spills, and mopped the polished, concrete floors, her gaze always respectfully downcast. Two young signals analysts, Jasker and Ruiz, stood near the main signals intelligence board, their voices sharp with the arrogance of youth and clearance. They didn't lower them as Alara's cart squeaked past. Total ghost signal. A whisper inside a whisper. But command wants us to find its origin. They think it's a new sub, Jasker said, sipping a steaming mug. You'd think they'd have better things to do than chase phantom sonar pings, Ruiz replied, leaning back in his chair, feet propped up on his console. He didn't move them as Alara needed to maneuver her bucket around them. She did so without a sound. A slight, almost imperceptible adjustment of her path, Jasker scoffed. Tell me about it. We're the sharpest ears on the planet, and they've got us listening for nothing. He took another loud slurp of his coffee, then gestured vaguely with the mug. You know, I swear the encryption on the latest downlink is slower than my grandma's dial-up. It's pathetic. As he turned, his elbow caught the mug. Hot coffee sloshed over the side, splashing onto the pristine floor right in Alara's path. Jasker barely glanced down. Whoops. Hey, you mind? He nudged the puddle with the toe of his boot before turning back to the board, already lost again in the conversation. He didn't use her name. He likely didn't know it. Alara stopped. The rhythmic swish slap ceased. For a moment, the only sound was the low thrum of the base's life support. She looked at the brown puddle, then at the back of the young analyst's head. Her face remained a placid, unreadable mask. She knelt, her knees making no sound on the floor, and produced a clean, dry cloth from her cart. She wiped the coffee with slow, deliberate strokes, her movements economical and precise. She didn't scrub. She absorbed. When the floor was clean and dry, she stood, placed the soiled cloth in a plastic bag, and resumed her mopping. Swish slap, swish slap. The sound moved away down the long, sterile corridor, fading into the ambient noise of the base. Jasker and Ruiz never looked back. They didn't notice the way she'd cleaned the spill, with a practiced efficiency that left no trace, no stickiness, no scent. They just saw a mess that was now gone. An hour later, Lieutenant Rostova, the watch commander, did her rounds. She was a woman who moved with the sharp, clipped energy of someone perpetually behind schedule. Her eyes, a pale, icy blue, scanned everything, but saw Alara as little more than a piece of furniture. Ma'am, Rostova said, her voice tight, not looking at Alara but at a smudge on the glass of the main command map. See to that. Alara gave a short, simple nod. She retrieved her spray bottle and another cloth, and as Rostova continued her patrol, barking orders about server latency and diagnostic reports, Alara polished the glass. She moved with a quiet grace, her reflection a hazy, indistinct shape, against the glowing topography of the Arctic seabed. No one noticed that her eyes weren't on the smudge she was cleaning, but on the map itself. They lingered for a fraction of a second on a deep, uncharted trench marked only as Sector Gamma 9. Then the smudge was gone, and she moved on. The shift change siren blared, a jarring electronic shriek that signaled the end of another 12-hour cycle. The night crew, bleary-eyed and cynical, shuffled in to replace the day crew. Jasker and Ruiz were stretching, complaining about the lack of any real action. Another day, another dollar. Ruiz sighed, logging out of his terminal. More, like another day, Another aneurysm from boredom, Jasker countered. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the air. A low, insistent alarm, one nobody had heard in years. It wasn't the fire alarm or the security breach alert. It was deeper, more fundamental. Be-doop. 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 Every head snapped up. On the main board, a single stark message flashed. In crimson letters, total signal blackout. Then the world went quiet. The hum of the servers died. The clicking keyboards stopped. The massive wall-size screens showing satellite feeds, sonar readings, and encrypted traffic blinked off, one by one, plunging the command center into a disorienting darkness, broken only by the faint red glow of the emergency backup lights. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. Even the insistent be-doop of the alarm had vanished, as if the very power feeding it had been strangled. Then came the voices. Confused, then panicked. What the hell was that? I've lost my console. Everything's dead. Backup power isn't kicking in. Why isn't backup kicking in? Lieutenant Rostova's voice sliced through the rising fear. Status report, now. What have we got? Nothing, Lieutenant, a voice called. Part 2 of 3. The silence in the command center was a physical weight. It pressed in on them, heavy and absolute. A void where the familiar pulse of technology used to be. Emergency lights cast long dancing shadows, turning familiar consoles into monolithic tombs. Men and women trained for crisis were shouting into dead phones, their voices swallowed by the oppressive quiet. In the midst of this rising tide of panic, a new sound emerged, soft but distinct, the gentle splash of a cloth hitting water. Alara had dropped her rag into her bucket. She straightened up, her spine erect, and the tired, stooped posture of the cleaner seemed to fall away like a shedskin. She was still just a woman in a gray jumpsuit, but the way she held herself had changed. There was an economy of motion, a purpose that hadn't been there before. She began to walk, not toward the exits, but deeper into the room, directly toward the main command console where Lieutenant Rostova was trying to raise anyone, anything, on a dead shortwave radio. This is KR-7 command. Does anyone copy? I repeat, this is KR-7. Is any channel active? Rostova's voice was strained, the professional calm fraying at the edges. She saw Alara approaching from the corner of her eye. Ma'am, now is not the time, Rostova snapped, her focus still on the useless. Radio, the area is on lockdown. Please return to the utility hall. Alara didn't stop. Her rubber-soled shoes made no sound on the floor. She walked past the junior analysts who were huddled together, staring at the blank screens as if they could will them back to life. Jasker noticed her path. Hey, lady, where are you going? This is a restricted... His voice trailed off as she reached the dais, the slightly elevated platform holding the primary command station. I gave you an order, ma'am, Rostova said, finally turning, her full attention to Alara, her frustration boiling over into anger. This is an active crisis. You are interfering with military personnel. Step away from the console now. Alara didn't look at her. Her gaze was fixed on the floor, specifically on a seam in the polished concrete that everyone else had walked over for years without a second glance. She knelt, her movements fluid, and pressed 2 fingers against the almost invisible line. With a faint hiss of depressurizing air, a square floor panel unlocked and lifted a few millimeters. A collective gasp went through the small group of onlookers. Ruiz took a step forward. What the... I've never seen that before. Ignoring them all, Alara lifted the heavy panel and set it aside. Beneath it was not a tangle of modern fiber optics, but a recess containing something ancient, something they only saw in textbooks, a hard-wired manual console. A thick, coiled cable snaked from it into the deep earth beneath the base. It had a small monochrome screen, no bigger than a hand, and a heavy physical keyboard that looked more like it belonged on a typewriter. It was an analog relic in a digital cathedral. What is that? Rostova whispered, her anger replaced by sheer, dumbfounded confusion. Alara slid into the seat, her fingers hovering over the keys for a barest moment, and then she began to type. The sound was explosive in the silent room. A harsh, rhythmic clatter of plastic on metal. It wasn't the soft tap of modern keyboards. It was a percussive, aggressive sound, the noise of a machine being physically forced into action. Her fingers didn't just type. They flew, striking the keys with a brutal, mesmerizing speed that no simple cleaner could possess. Code began to scroll across the tiny green screen, lines of it, impossibly fast, a language no one in the room recognized. It was dense, elegant, and utterly alien. Jasker, the cocky analyst who'd mocked the base's encryption, stared, his mouth hanging open. That's not standard protocol. That's not any protocol I know. It's like she's writing the base's operating system from scratch. Shut up, Jasker, Rostova breathed, unable to look away. For a full minute, the only sound was the furious clatter of the keyboard. Alara's face, illuminated by the ghostly green glow from the tiny screen, was a mask of intense concentration. The quiet, invisible woman was gone. In her place was a commander, a creator, a force of nature locked in a battle with a machine. Then, she stopped. Her right hand moved to a single, large red button on the console. She pressed it. A deep, resonant hum vibrated up through the floor. A single terminal on the main wall flickered to life, bathing the room in a pale blue light. It wasn't a standard display. It was a raw diagnostic feed showing a cascade of data. And then, a voice. It wasn't human. It was a calm, synthesized, androgynous voice, speaking from the base's long-dormant emergency address system. It echoed from every speaker in the silent room, clear and unwavering. Manual override initiated. System core accessed via failsafe terminal. Security Protocol 7 engaged. A pause. Rostova held her breath. Biometric and psychometric markers. Confirmed. Another pause. This one stretching for an eternity. The voice seemed to be searching deep within its own memory, pulling a name from a file buried for decades. Welcome back, Commander. The voice spoke the final word with a chilling, inhuman placidity. Welcome back, Echo. Part 3 of 3. The synthesized word hung in the dead air, an artifact from a forgotten age. Echo. It reverberated not as a sound, but as a shockwave through the minds of everyone present. Lieutenant Rostova stared, her face pale in the glow of the single active monitor. Jasker and Ruiz looked at each other, then back at the woman at the console, their youthful arrogance completely stripped away, leaving only raw disbelief. This was the woman who mopped their floors. The woman Jasker had dismissively waved off after spilling his coffee. The cleaner. The ghost. Echo. Alara's hands, the same hands they had only ever seen holding a mop handle or a dirty rag, rested on the analog keyboard. She took a slow, deliberate breath, and for the first time in anyone's memory, she spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it filled the entire room, cutting through the fear and confusion with the simple, undeniable weight of authority. Lieutenant Rostova, report. It wasn't a question. It was a command. Rostova flinched as if struck. Her military training, ingrained over a decade, battled with the reality-bending scene before her. Protocol, chain of command, regulations, they all screamed that she was the ranking officer. But her senses, her instincts, told her that command had just shifted, fundamentally and irrevocably. She swallowed, her throat dry. Report. What, ma'am? The word ma'am felt inadequate, clumsy. Damage assessment, Echo said, her eyes still on the green diagnostic screen. What is the last thing your system registered before the blackout? A ghost signal, Jasker blurted out, stepping forward. Sonar. We thought it was a sub. Faint. We were trying to isolate the origin when... It wasn't sonar, Echo stated, her tone flat and certain. It was the carrier wave for a logic bomb, a digital parasite designed to ride a signal, so faint it would be dismissed as background noise. Once inside, it didn't attack. It waited for you to try and isolate it. The moment you focused your system's resources on it, it triggered. She finally turned her head, her gaze sweeping over them. It was not the downcast, vacant look of the cleaner. Her eyes were sharp, analytical, and deeply tired. This wasn't an outage. It was a decapitation strike. In precisely 90 seconds, the parasite will finish burrowing and erase the primary data core. This entire facility, every piece of intelligence, every friendly position, every encrypted key will be gone. And our enemy will know it happened. This base will become a blind spot on the map. A fresh wave of panic rippled through the room. 90 seconds. What do we do? Rostova asked, her voice now deferential, desperate. Echo's attention snapped to the two young analysts. You, Jasker, Ruiz, you are signals analysts. You know how to listen. I am going to give you a frequency. You will not find it on any preset channel. You will have to configure a receiver manually. She looked at Jasker. Can you isolate a 6 GHz subchannel and invert its polarity? Jasker stared back, looking like a child. Theoretically, I've never... There is no theoretically. Today, Echo cut in, her voice like ice. Get to Terminal 4. It has an independent power cell. I just activated it. Ruiz, you will go to the server stacks. I need you to physically sever the connection to Server 7. Not power it down. Pull the primary cable. You have 60 seconds. The two men were frozen for a heartbeat, staring at her. Go! Echo commanded. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried an intensity that sent them scrambling into the darkness, as if propelled by a physical force. She turned back to Rostova. Lieutenant, I need a gun. Rostova's eyes widened. A gun? There is a manual hardline junction behind panel C9 in the west corridor. The parasite knows this. It is designed to be countered this way. Standard counter protocol would be to send a technician. The enemy knows this too. They will not have sent a technician. They will have sent a cleaner. The realization dawned on Rostova's face, cold and horrifying. An enemy operative, someone like Echo, could have been embedded for years, waiting, without another word. Rostova unholstered her sidearm and offered it to Echo, handle first. Echo took the weapon. It did not look strange in her hand. It looked like it belonged there. She checked the slide and the magazine with a practiced, fluid motion that was terrifying to watch. Keep them on task, Echo said, handing the gun back to a stunned Rostova. My work is here. She turned back to the analog keys, her fingers once again becoming a blur of motion. On the one active screen, they could see her code fighting the parasites. 2 digital serpents, one green, one red, locked in a silent, desperate battle. The seconds ticked by. 40, 30, 20. Jasker's voice yelled from across the room. I have the channel! It's just static! It is not static, Echo's voice called out, never breaking her rhythm. Listen to the space between the static. Send the raw data stream to my console, now! A new line of code appeared on Echo's screen. Jasker's feed. The red serpent of the virus faltered. 10 seconds! Ruiz! Now! Rostova shouted into the dark. A loud metallic clank echoed from the server room as the cable was torn free. On the screen, the red code fractured, broke apart, and then vanished. The green code flooded the display, line after line of victorious clean script. System core. Secure primary power restoring. The main lights flickered on, humming back to life with a sound that was suddenly the sweetest music they had ever heard. Consoles booted up. Screens blinked on, showing standard operational displays. The crisis was over. Stunned silence reigned for a long moment. Jasker and Ruiz walked slowly back to the center of the room, staring at Echo with something akin to religious awe. Just then, the external comm speaker crackled. A furious, static-laced voice boomed through. This is General Madigan at NORAD. What in God's name happened at KR7? Our entire board went black. And who is authorizing a system? Reboot under the call sign Echo? Lieutenant Rostova stood tall, her voice shaking but clear. She looked directly at the woman in the cleaner's jumpsuit who was now quietly pushing the ancient analog console back into its recess in the floor. General, Rostova said, her voice filled with a respect that bordered on reverence. Stand by. You're not going to believe this. Later, after the official reports had been filed and the chain of command was struggling to understand the ghost they had on their payroll, things returned to a fragile quiet. Jasker, in his exhaustion and relief, fumbled another cup of coffee, spilling it near the command console. He swore under his breath and started looking for a paper towel, but stopped when he saw Ilara. She was standing by her cart, her expression as calm and unreadable as it had been that morning. She held out a clean, dry cloth for him. Jasker looked at her, at the cloth, his face flushed with shame. Ma'am, Echo, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. Alara's eyes met his. There was no anger in them, no triumph, only a profound, quiet dignity. She pushed the cloth gently into his hand. "Everyone has a job to do on this base," she said, her voice once again a soft whisper. "See that you do yours." She picked up her mop, and with a familiar swish slap, began to clean the floor, her purpose unwavering, her worth now known in the silence.